was going on was that a student-led movement took to the streets in July, all through July. It was 6 weeks of July and the beginning of August. And they started off complaining, essentially, about this quota system in the public service, in government recruitment, that only a small number of people who were eligible because they passed the exams, and they're very, very difficult, very competitive exams, were getting these jobs because some of these jobs were earmarked, were kept aside for the grandchildren of people who had fought in the Liberation War in 1971. Right, so this is kind of a long, this is like grandchildren now of these people who fought in 71. Why are they entitled to this, particular benefit? And really what it meant was that these jobs were just going to cronies of the regime. And that regime was led by Sheikh Hasina. It was a real iron lady. She was a real toughie. She is still alive. She's in India now. She's a real toughie and also increasingly authoritarian and very, very violent. They disappeared lots of political opponents and so on. This had been going on for 10, 15 years. They'd been in power for 15 years.
They disappeared.
They disappeared people, yeah, an active verb, yeah, exactly. I mean, this is something that happens. It happened in Chile back in the Pinochet regime. And many governments have used this strategy of disappearing opponents. It's really insidious and it's really terrifying. I know a couple of people to whom this happened. They were disappeared temporarily and then released again on grounds that they wouldn't, cause trouble. So these students took to the street, and the army and the police started shooting them. Wow. There was this one chap, Abu Saeed. He was an English student in Begum Rokeya University in Rangpur, which is actually my hometown. And I went to see where he was shot. I was there in January, and I went up north to see where he was shot. And this chap, he stood like this. He stood with his arms wide open, and flung his chest out while they were protesting when the army and the police came. And I guess believing they wouldn't shoot him. Really defiant. He was really defiant. He was early 20s, young chap. And they shot him, they killed him. And you can see the video online. Abu Saeed, his name was. It's a terrible thing. And that really changed the mood. First, people were protesting, politely, without violence. Started getting shot by the police, by the army. Can you imagine if you went out? You're just trying to get a decent job in the government on a fair basis, and they start shooting you? Wow. I mean, this was, the end for that.
Why do you think they were aggressive and shot citizens?
Because, there was a lot of stuff going on. But, when you've been in power for 15 years and you've just held a fake election 4 or 5 months before, and you're going to be sitting in power for another 5 years, no one's going to bother you, and you've stuck the opposition in jail, and that most of the newspaper editors are too scared to say anything very overt, although they were pretty good about reporting all of this violence and the killing of the students and so on. And also that you've got the army in your pocket because you're giving them lots of benefits. And similarly, the police are not going to say anything or do anything against you because you've given them loads of nice contracts. And then the big business people are all in your pocket too because they're making out like bandits, as we now know. Your Professor Mushtaq Khan from the economics department, of course, has done loads of amazing work on the corruption that went on in Bangladesh. And I think he's right now in Bangladesh trying to recover some of the stolen funds, trying to help the government recover the stolen funds. He did a lot of very, very careful analysis of corruption in the procurement process, for instance, when they were building big power plants. A lot of people were making a lot of money that they should not have been. So there were lots of reasons to want to hold on to power, and lots of kind of Sheikh Hasina, I think she felt she had impunity. Nobody was going to touch her. And I think a lot of us, like I was sitting here in London, talking about this to the media and so on. I thought she was staying. I didn't think she would be going anywhere, because she had too much at stake. They'd killed too many people at one point for it to be easy for them to go, because then they would be held responsible. So
So what was the turning point? So we had these student protests. I guess the military came down on them
The
extraordinarily
military did,
hard.
the police, the others, the ruling party had a bunch of so-called student, and youth
Mm,
groups as well, who were pretty violent. They're basically a bunch of thugs, criminal gangs, essentially, backed by
mm,
the regime. The turning point, that's a very good question. So they killed quite a lot of people. They killed probably about I don't think we've ever got the final numbers, maybe 1,500 people.
wow.
And it wasn't just students as well. So it started off as students, lots of young people, lots of workers. The garments industry, the fashion industry is huge in Bangladesh. Lots of those workers came out to the streets as well, transport workers, others. There's a couple of really good short forensic films that were made earlier this year, which I've seen, which you can see online. The Integrity, the Truth. Oh, I can't remember the name of the organization. I'll dig it out for you. But these
Mm,
films have been reconstructed using social media footage. So people had posted on their Instagram reels or whatever, they were watching the police or army shooting people. Like, you can't go around shooting unarmed protesters. It's against the law. It's against
mm,
all the laws. There's no way you can do that. So a lot of the ruling party tried to say, oh no, it wasn't us, or it was bad actors or whatever. And actually, these films have proven that this is what happened: was that the army and the police deliberately went out to shoot these young people
wow.
on the streets. The turning point really was, it kept going on. It kept going on. They switched off the internet for about a week. And at that point, those of us sitting here in London, in the US, and other places were really frantically trying to get the world to pay attention, trying to get someone with a voice to speak on behalf of these people who were being massacred. And it was on the 5th of August, the student-led movement said, we're going to march to Dhaka. Dhaka's the capital city. We're going to go there. And we're all going to be there. And by this time, literally millions of people were taking to the streets, like everyone by this time. I mean, it's a
Wow.
big country, right? 175 million. So a couple millions here and there. And, so if
That's
we
what
can do
did it.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there were millions of people. And, people from all walks of life. I have friends who are big businessmen. They drive around in the fanciest cars you can imagine. They were there.
Mm,
People who pull rickshaws, they were there. Everyone was there. Mothers, grandmothers, everyone was there.
People had enough.
mm,
Sorry?
People have had
People
enough.
had had enough. And they also had realized that if they were going to go around and shoot everyone, well, how was this ever going to end?
mm,
And you have to remember also at the same time what's been going on in Bangladesh, as is going on in other countries around the world, is massive inflation crisis, right? Cost
yeah.
of living crisis. So if you've spent 2 years since the invasion of Ukraine seeing your energy prices go up, food prices go up, of course, rent then goes up, everything goes up, except for wages, of
Mm,
course. Salaries and wages take much longer to go up. So people are really struggling, but also unable to get rid of a government that was doing nothing for them.
mm,
So all of this stuff really, and of course we saw the same thing happen in other countries as well.
yeah.
Other countries, people have, kicked out their governments because of the cost of living.